Welcome to the third installment of the ADTRAN NetVanta UC feature presentation webinar series. The focus of this presentation is business process automation. The ultimate goal for automating business processes is to reduce or eliminate communication bottlenecks and staff inefficiencies. This can be done by linking your front-end communications, in other words your PBX or telephone system, with back-end business data in your corporate databases. There are two types of business processes as they relate to communications. Those that are inbound, in other words, your customer service team is answering calls from contacts, your partners, or perhaps your own employees, and those that are outbound, where your company is placing calls to a group of people with some kind of common message. As I mentioned, the ultimate goal is to reduce communication bottlenecks and staff inefficiencies. Providing the same answer to callers over and over again is a perfect example of a staff inefficiency. Why not automate that business process? Why not allow callers access to back-end corporate data in a secure and a controlled way so that your customer service team isn't speaking out that information over and over again? The side benefit to this, of course, is that you can provide customers with 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, self-service access to information in a secure and a controlled fashion. Other examples of inbound processes include personnel location based on some kind of input from the caller or based on the time of day. And that applies again to when you have after hours responsibilities to your clients where you need to get a hold of a personnel after hours and that personnel changes based on the day of the week or perhaps based on some kind of location-based information like area code. These are just some examples of how your NetVanta UC solution can automate business processes as they relate to communications on the inbound front. Now let's look at the outbound side. In a call center, agents are often faced with the task of speaking out that same information over and over again. For example, when they call somebody and it hits an answering machine, they're going to have to speak out that audio exactly the same way every time with the exact same enthusiasm. Why not have them transfer the call to the NetVanta UC service that detects that when that answering machine has finished playing its audio, and then the NetVanta UC system delivers that recorded message exactly the same way every time, thus eliminating that redundant task from your team and allowing them to continue on to the next caller. Another example, political campaigns. They need to spread the word quickly. They need their constituents to call their congressperson to influence the decision that would be being passed in Congress. The NetVanta UC system can be programmed to call a set of contacts, deliver a common message, allow those constituents to transfer to their congressperson based on their location or perhaps their caller input. Again, these are just some examples of how the NetVanta UC solution can be used in a call center environment. Let's look at appointment reminders. It's a daily responsibility for many types of organizations, hospitals, healthcare clinics, automobile dealerships. All of these organizations have a daily responsibility to call people, tell them they have an appointment, and that is an arduous process. It takes a long time, and why not allow your staff to focus on serving customers that are actually in the office, that have taken the time to come and see you in person. Automate it with NetVanta UC. Allow the system to try secondary numbers in the event that that primary number goes unanswered. Do something different if the system encounters an answering machine or a fax machine. Automating this process allows you to drive existing and new business and reduce the overall cost of your missed appointments. The same type of application could be applied to a different context, emergency or community notifications, where a large group of people have to call an even larger set of people to deliver some kind of common message in a very, very fast time frame. NetVanta UC can be implemented to call people, email and SMS notifications, and initiate these notifications either over the phone or using some kind of trigger, whether it's scheduled or some kind of external trigger like an event in the database. You can assign priority order to different contact points and making sure that those most important people are contacted first before the rest so that they can then assist perhaps with that emergency or community notification. The system is smart enough and intelligent enough to recognize answering machines and fax machines and human voices and then do different things based on the type of media that's detected on the line. And with the logging capabilities of the system, you can take remedial action, make sure that everybody is notified no matter what based on those results. Now let's look at an example of how you can build such an automated process using the NetVanta UC service editor. A service is like an application. An application starts when a call is placed and answered, whether the call comes in or whether it's placed by the system in the first place to a contact. And I can create a new service simply by right-clicking New Service. And in this example, I'm going to show you how we can automate a purchase order hotline for an organization that sells widgets or what have you, and wants to provide access to callers who want information about when their order is going to be shipped, or perhaps what their tracking number is, or perhaps they need a copy of their invoice sent to them. So let's look how this would be built. The service editor you see in front of you here is a tool that allows us, using a drag and drop interface, to create custom call flows for automating business processes. The things you see on the left here are called elements. An element encompasses a specific type of behavior. For example, a play announcement element plays audio. Flow control looks for time of day and day of week, or perhaps the caller ID, and matches it and does something different based on different matches. In this example, we're going to start with an announcement, because when somebody calls an automated system, they're going to need to hear something to instruct them about what to do. So for this particular example, a company wants to automate access to information in their database with respect to purchase orders. So this announcement could be recorded by a professional organization and stored on the server in a WAV file format, which I can access here. Or perhaps I want to record this audio myself, clicking the record button, picking a name. In this case, I'm going to overwrite something that's already there, and then record this audio using a computer microphone or over the handset from my phone system. I can edit this audio after the fact by cutting pieces out, adjusting volumes. And once that's all done, click Save, and that audio is stored on the server. Now, this announcement might say something like, "Welcome to our purchase order hotline. This is where you can get information about purchase orders that you've placed, including your tracking number, your shipping date, and access to customer service. Please enter your purchase order number, which is on the top right-hand corner of your invoice." At this point, we've told the caller to enter some digits, so we have to be prepared to collect them from the caller, and we use a gather digits element here to do so. This element collects digits, DTMF tones, and stores them in this element so we can reference them later in the service. Let's say our invoice numbers are 4 digits long. So I'm going to stop after 4 digits. Now, if the caller doesn't enter any digits, I'll send them back to the beginning. But let's say they've entered 4 digits. Now we need to go into our corporate database and find a record that matches that purchase order number we've collected. The database element set here allows us to interact with virtually any ODBC compliant database. Whether it's Oracle, Access, SQL, Excel, text-based files, these are all ODBC compliant, and therefore we can access that information, either retrieving information, adding, deleting, or updating information in that database. In this case, we want to fetch something based on the digits we've collected from the caller. I'm going to call this element get purchase order, and then I'm going to point and click to configure the service to find that particular record in the database. I've already set an ODBC link to the purchase orders table, so I'm going to select that data table, and I want to find the record for where the purchase order record number matches the digits we've collected from the caller. In this case, gather digits values. You'll notice get purchase order number is a selectable item. This will find that record that matches the numbers we collected from the caller. Now you notice the variety of different connection points here. If there were many rows fetched, perhaps there's some inconsistency in the database or some problem we want to transfer to customer service. So that might be extension 800 as a call queue. In a perfect world, let's assume that they've entered in a valid purchase order number, and at this point we want to give them some options. So I'll throw a menu element on here, and the menu element plays some audio. Again, we can pull this from the server in a WAV file format, or perhaps record it myself and give them some options while listening for DTMF tones. So this audio might say something like, "Thank you, we found your record. Press 1 if you'd like your estimated shipping date. Press 2 if you'd like a copy of your invoice sent to your fax machine." So now we need to do something based on those DTMF tone presses. The first option was speaking out their estimated shipping date. So I'm going to put a text-to-speech element here, and I'm going to write your estimated shipping date is. Now, it's going to read that text out using text-to-speech, but we need to read out that information from the database. In the element where we fetch that data from the database called getPurchaseOrder, I can actually refer to that element here and pick any text-based field for it to read out from the record we fetch from the database. In this case, the estimated shipping date. The same goes for when we want to send a fax to somebody, for example. The fax on demand element allows us to send a fax to the caller based on the numbers they enter in over the phone using DTMF tones. The fax document that I'm going to send is also from the database. The get purchase order element is storing a reference to the fax image that's in the database. In this case, it's only showing me those fields that are fax images, in this case, invoice. Now, we might, in the audio, give them some other options. Press 3 if you'd like to speak to customer service. I already have an element that transfers the call to customer service, so I'm just going to connect it up to that element. Now, you see, in a matter of a few minutes, I've built a fairly sophisticated service that gives callers access to corporate information in a database in a secure and a controlled way in a matter of a few minutes, and only using 7 elements. Now, we can get much more sophisticated. We can allow for authentication by asking callers for a password, which might also be retrieved from a database. We might want to provide them the option to have that information emailed to them over the phone, as opposed to having that invoice faxed to them. If we have their email address in a database, we could send them a copy of that invoice by email. Many different possibilities, and it's very flexible, and it's very intuitive, and it's easy to test as well because it's visual. You can see what's happening with the call while you interact with it, as opposed to it being a development environment where you're programming using a programming language. It's very difficult to test. So I'm going to switch back to the slideshow here and finish off by talking about some of the benefits of using a NetVanta UC system for automating business processes. The obvious focus of this presentation has been time savings. Eliminating redundant tasks, reducing those manual calls performed by employees to groups of contacts, allowing your staff to focus on higher value duties like troubleshooting, problem solving, dealing with those customers who are in the office as opposed to being on the phone and calling people. Reduction of processing errors. You can provide a more consistent user experience. Your customer relationships can improve. You can still provide access to customer service reps in the same way, but you can eliminate some of those redundant answers that customer service have to speak out over the phone by automating those processes. An important benefit here is that you can integrate the solution into almost any environment. Regardless if you have a phone system or not, if you're looking for a new one, ADTRAN can furnish a new PBX for you for small businesses all the way up to distributed enterprise. But if you're not looking to replace your PBX, but you'd still like to take advantage of automating these business processes, you can implement this solution either by integrating with your existing PBX or perhaps having this solution in its own silo connected to the PSTN directly. Of course, as a result, if you don't need to rip and replace, you can leverage those existing investments and substantially lower your capital investment, thus speeding up that return on investment. Using the appointment reminder, your appointment slots are going to be more often filled to capacity, allowing your customers to have self-service access over the phone any time of the day. And for those small companies that can't afford to hire more staff, their revenue thresholds may not be at the point where they can justify hiring a new person, but they still need that high level of customer service quality, you can implement this solution and provide better customer service without having to increase your staff headcount. So what's the return on investment? Let's look at some quick examples of different applications we've looked at today and how you can calculate a quick ROI. So for the appointment reminder solution, in order to calculate return on investment, you just sum up the hours you spend calling clients every day to remind them of appointments, add the savings from a reduction in missed appointments, and divide that by the cost of the solution. For an after-hours answering service, sum up the cost of your after-hours employees or your outsourcing costs for after-hours and divide that by the solution cost for NetVanta UC. For your hotline service, the thing that we just showed you here, you're increasing your staff efficiencies. So when you implement an automated system, the return on investment is the sum of the hours spent doing these search and speak tasks, plus the opportunity cost for those customers that are waiting in a queue, waiting for customer service because you're inundated with calls, and divide that by the NetVanta UC solution cost. All in all, a quick return on investment regardless of the type of solution you implement here. There's a fast and quantifiable ROI. For more information about any of the other NetVanta UC features and for information about NetVanta UC products and for more demonstrations of different UC features, please visit adtran.com/UC. Thanks for watching.